Hey everybody, welcome back to Guns and Gadgets, your premier source on Second Amendment news. And we're going to take a deep look at the state of the Second Amendment as it stands today in June of 2020. Yeah, you heard me right. We're going to take a deep dive into what the state of the Second Amendment is today. And today is June 18th, 2020. Before I jump into this, I want to thank the sponsor of today's news, and that is Gun Pro Deals. Check out Gun Pro Deals online. They have a fantastic website. They have tons and tons of cool things that we enjoy in this community, and often at prices that you can't find anywhere else. Check them out. I can't put the link. I apologize. You'll have to just search it. It's very easy, but I guarantee you'll find something that makes you smile. All right, so where do we stand now with the Second Amendment? Now, I've been doing this channel for a few years now, and a lot of you have been along for the ride. And I'm sure you've noticed that every time we get one decision to head our way, we get about 7 or 8 that go against us. And it's not fun. It's very frustrating, and it has turned my hair gray and moved my hairline back. It's very, very stressful to see something that you believe in so wholeheartedly as one of the pillars of this country, the right to defend yourself and the right to be there to correct your country if it gets that bad. So it's been frustrating. And what I've done is I've taken a very, very deep look at what has happened since, DC versus Heller. And DC versus Heller was an instrumental case in June of 2008, 12 years ago. In fact, the anniversary is coming up in 8 days. And that decision it's a landmark decision, and that changed a lot. It turned the thinking of government on its head. In that case, just to paraphrase, our individual right to keep and bear arms was finally recognized by the Supreme Court of the United States. Even though we, the people, knew that it was our right because it was recognized in the founding documents, but it was the first time that a court ever said that it is an individual right. And that, at the time, was huge. If you're not familiar with that case, I'll have links down below to some of the cases I'm talking about here. And DC basically banned guns overnight. And Dick Heller was one of the petitioners who actually has become a friend of mine, and I'm very grateful to know you, Dick. He said, no, you're not banning my gun. So it's a good case if you want to read up on it. And Dick Heller is a hell of a guy, and I'm glad that he texts me every now and then and gives me a laugh. Helps keep this light. Immediately after the decision of DC Heller, another landmark case was actually filed, and that was McDonald versus the city of Chicago. And that decision came out in 2010. And that decision was huge too, and a lot of people don't really remember that in that case, the justices decided that the 14th Amendment makes the Second Amendment applicable to the states. There was a belief back then that, the Second Amendment is a national thing for the national Constitution. You have that right nationally, but the powers reside in the states if it's not specifically mentioned in the Constitution, right? And so they thought they had the power to restrict whatever they wanted. And the case of McDonald changed that. And we thought, in 2010, we were on the path to righteousness, to freedom, right? To finally get the burden off of our back. However, those two huge cases actually forgot something, and the fact that the justices never, ever addressed this brought us to where we are right now. And where are we? We're in a situation where owning your gun in your home is fine, but all other forms of gun control are cool and acceptable. Why? Well, the main reason is because in DC versus Heller and McDonald, Chicago, there was no level of judicial review that was set when it comes to reviewing challenges in court regarding somebody's Second Amendment right. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with how judges review stuff and how the court system really works, judicial review is a way that a judge basically takes into effect what's going on in this argument and what test do I use to determine who is right and who is wrong. Whenever any of our other constitutionally guaranteed rights are challenged in court, a strict scrutiny test is applied. And a strict scrutiny test looks at the case or the law being challenged, and the law must prove three things. The first one is that that law must serve a compelling state interest, meaning like this has to stay, otherwise bedlam will ensue. Number two is that law must be narrowly tailored in which it will obtain that goal. It just can't be like a broad brushstroke that will affect a whole bunch of stuff in order to get whatever it is they're seeking. And number three, the law must use the least intrusive and the least restrictive way in order to carry out that goal. Now, right away, if you're thinking about gun control in your area, it doesn't pass that muster, right? Obviously. Well, why is it okay? Well, because the justices in Heller and McDonald never said there shall be a strict scrutiny standard applied to the Second Amendment, to any Second Amendment case. The lower court justices have taken up a balancing test, which is a lesser level of judicial review. Strict scrutiny is the highest level of judicial review. And the balancing test, well, look around the nation. A balancing test is simply this. The justice will weigh the right or weigh the need for you, the person, to have that Glock in states that don't sell new Glocks versus the need for public safety. Because somewhere along the line, they've decided that we can restrict certain parts of this Second Amendment that we don't like because it will keep the public safe. If you watch this channel, you know I attack that all kinds of ways. But that is what's going on. The balancing test that actually was discussed in McDonald versus Chicago has come to play in just about every single location in the country. So probably you're thinking of a case in your area where a judge used the balancing test and elected to go with gun control in order to keep the public safe. And as the 12 years have gone on since Heller, it's gotten pretty bad here if you are someone who believes in and loves the Second Amendment. But in the last few years, there's been light. There's been a beacon of hope because in certain cases, some of the justices in the Supreme Court have stated that they should be taking up Second Amendment cases. I'll give you some examples. In 2015, Justice Clarence Thomas and Antonin Scalia said this: "The lower courts continue to whittle away the Supreme Court's rulings in the District of Columbia versus Heller and McDonald versus Chicago, while 7 justices stand by quietly, refusing to intervene." And what are they referring to? There's 9 justices on the Supreme Court. 7 of them are sitting by while these 2 want to actually fix the runaway train. Now, 3 months after that statement, Justice Antonin Scalia passed away, and the actual amount of gun control around the country skyrocketed. Then came the Peruta v. California case in 2017. Again, the court said, pfft, and there were 2 judges that actually said, hey, we need to take these up. Again, it was Justice Clarence Thomas and the new Justice Neil Gorsuch. But the other 7 said, gun rights, pfft, we don't need guns. Crazy. And then from 17 to 19, they didn't touch anything related to the Second Amendment until 2019. The New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus the City of New York case came up. And while it was very narrow in scope, the court actually decided to take it up. Now, that case had specifically to do with permits in New York City and how they were not allowing people to move in and around the city with their permit or leave the city with their permit. And the City of New York changed their law and then pressed the Supreme Court to dismiss the case, which they did. After that was dismissed, this time 3 justices spoke up in their dissent. Now, a dissent is when they disagree with the majority decision. The 3 justices this time were Thomas, Gorsuch, and this time Justice Alito. Alito said this, though, for those that were paying attention, and his quote was, "We are told that the mode of review in this case is representative of the way Heller has been treated in lower courts. If that is true, there is cause for concern." Now, I want to say Are the Supreme Court justices really that out of touch with America where they can't tell that lower courts are using a balancing test instead of strict scrutiny? I mean, really. Even people who live under rocks can tell this. But that is what these ivory tower folks do. They don't deal with lower Americans, us bottom feeders. They're the elites. Then they really don't know what's really going on. Now, if you're a member of this channel, you remember when that was dismissed, I talked about how Justice Brett Kavanaugh spoke up. And Kavanaugh's quote after they tossed the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association was this: "The court should address that issue soon, perhaps in one of the several Second Amendment cases with petitions for certiorari now pending before the court." And that was referring to the 10 cases that we finally heard from the court on this past Monday. They decided to deny all 10 cases. If you were following some of the things the justices were saying regarding the Second Amendment cases that they had, kicked aside in the recent past, it became evident, it seemed evident, that we had 4 justices that were very in favor of taking up a Second Amendment case to set the record straight. Alito, Thomas, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch. Then with that, I even thought, and I've said here, that I thought that we would have at least one of those 10 cases that were before the court taken up. And we know that that didn't happen. What I believe in my heart of hearts is that those 4 justices don't believe that they can get one of the other justices to side with them if it came to a case that they would have to make a ruling on. Because we know you need 5 justices, a minimum of 5, to pass everything 5-4 or 6-3 or whatever. The rumblings I hear, and of course I don't hear it from anybody in the Supreme Court, but that seems to be a concern right now. One of the cases they denied was Rogers v. Grewal, and that was a case out of New Jersey that had to do with their carry law. And in New Jersey, you have to show great cause, great need in order to get a concealed carry permit. They don't let you have it just because it's your right. You have to prove that basically you're being attacked by hordes of people and you need this to protect yourself. And in this case, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote a dissent. And I'm going to paraphrase his dissent here, but listen to what he's saying, because there's a lot in this. He says, "The text of the Second Amendment protects the right of the people to keep and bear arms. We have stated this fundamental right is necessary to our system of ordered liberty. Yet in several jurisdictions throughout the country, law-abiding citizens have been barred from exercising the fundamental right to bear arms because they cannot show that they have a justifiable need or a good reason for doing so. One would think that such an onerous burden on a fundamental right would warrant this court's review. This court would almost certainly review the constitutionality of a law requiring citizens to establish a justifiable need before exercising their free speech rights. And it seems highly unlikely that the court would allow a state to enforce a law requiring a woman to provide a justifiable need before seeking an abortion. But today, faced with a petition challenging just such a restriction on citizens' Second Amendment rights, the court simply looks the other way. And that is a slap in the face to the justices who decided not to take it. Now, when I read this dissent, and I haven't finished reading all of them because it's a lot of reading and there's 10 cases, and it's tough because I'm trying to keep up with everything. But what I did notice is that Gorsuch and Alito didn't join in the dissent with Justice Thomas. And Kavanaugh, while he didn't agree in whole to the entire dissent, which is concerning. So where do we stand? Now that they've dismissed these 10 cases, we are in the exact same spot today, June 18th, 2020, that we were when DC and Heller was being decided. Exact same place. 12 years of just spinning in a hamster wheel is where we are. A majority of the courts in the country have sided with gun control because they use that balancing test instead of strict scrutiny. My hope is my hope is that that will change. And I believe that there is a way to get it changed, and that has a lot to do with the Fifth Circuit of the United States court system. There's a lot to that, and that will play out in future videos. And I also want to say thank you to Dick Heller for his never-ending pressure when it comes to Second Amendment rights. Many people are aware of DC versus Heller, but many people don't know that he's had numerous lawsuits, Second Amendment related, since then, and they continue to this day. Now, I know, Dick, I know you watch my stuff, and my hope is that you see this one. If I can be of any help in any way, whether it's this channel or me as an individual, to help save the second, call me, text me, let me know. You have my number. Now, I will say that not all is doom and gloom. We have had a few justices stand tall and stand proud. See Justice Benitez over in California for Freedom Week, but they are few and far between. So that is my take on where we stand today related to the Second Amendment and why we are in the situation we are in. And you've seen, if you follow my Instagram and Facebook, how many of these tyrants, governors and attorneys general, have rejoiced since Monday when the threat to their totalitarian rule when it comes to firearms was just set aside and allowed to continue. It's very, very concerning. Now, my question is, what do you guys and gals think of this? Now, I know we'll have all kinds of answers, but let's have a well thought out conversation here. What do you see as the problem on why we are where we are, even after the decisions of Heller and McDonald? I'd really like to see what you think. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Different kind of video today, a little more thoughtful. I should have wore like a smoking jacket and a pipe, but these are some things that I've been working on and thinking about and researching since they told those 10 cases to go pound sand. All right, guys, thank you for your time. Till we see each other again, be safe, stay vigilant, carry a weapon. Have a good one.